Chiaroscuro, a looping illusion of delusion, inescapably linked to deeper influence. 3 boss fights with Cocoon? Back when she worked at the nursing home, Defh always loved listening to the elderly residents telling stories of their youth. One particular word seemed to come up again and again: home. Without her even realizing it, this word took root in the deepest part of Defh's heart, turning into a fervent desire. She yearned for a place of belonging, where she would never be abandoned. For a long time after meeting the commander in Griffin, she believed that she had found the home that belonged to her. And so, the home Defh longed for also became the future that Helen desired most. She opens her eyes once more and finds herself in that familiar scene again. Helen looks at the bag of fresh vegetables in her hand, then at the familiar door before her. She lets out a soft chuckle.
私のメンタルの奥深くまで入ってくるなんて面白いお客さんね。ここは私にとっての家であり、一番馴染み深い場所。ここではあなたに勝ち目はありません。ただいま。
Helen announces it like a declaration of sovereignty to an unseen enemy, saying the same praise she always does. Setting aside her sliver of weariness toward Cocoon, Helen smiles and pushes open the door she has opened countless times in the space of her own neural cloud.
お疲れ。
The commander looks up and gives her a gentle smile, just as always.
今夜はボルシチですよ。すぐ出来上がるので、それまでゆっくり休んでてくださいね。
Deftly tying on her apron, she neatly lays out the ingredients, then starts to process them. Helen immerses herself in her cooking while still keeping an eye on any changes in the space around her.
どこから現れるのかしら。手に持った食材、それとも部屋の隅っこから。どんなにリセットされても、ここだけは影響されなかった。それだけ私にとって大事な場所。
Helen continues to cook as countless theories pass through her neural cloud, wearing the same relaxed, gentle smile she always does.
指揮官、ぬいちゃんはどうですか？最近訓練を頑張っていて、1位を取りたいなんて言ってるんですよ。指揮官？
Receiving no reply, Helen turns to look. The next instant, she sees the lifeless figure lying on the sofa. The smile on Helen's lips freezes in an instant. Right then, she hears the sound of another person's footsteps inside the room.
敵。
Helen hurries after the footsteps, only to find Defh collapse on the floor. The curtain stirs. A blurry figure flashes past the balcony. The enemy is still around. Helen rushes to the balcony, desperate to chase down the murderer, but what greets her is the enemy's sudden counterattack. An immense force of impact engulfs Helen in an instant. Her body is paralyzed for a moment. The face of the murderer that should have appeared before her is covered by a veil of darkness. Every action she takes seems to be stopped by the crushing darkness. All Helen feels is herself falling, collapsing uncontrollably within her neural space.
こんな奥深くまで改ざんできるっていうの。
Her consciousness returns. Helen gasps for breath, finding herself still standing in the room. The scene before her is the same as before. Ding dong. The familiar doorbell rings once more.
ただいま。
Helen's neural cloud feels as though it is frozen solid.
この声はさっきの私。
Helen tries to walk to the door, only to find she has no control over her frame. She is now a spectator, as if she is a guest in someone else's base layer. She watches herself leave this area and enter the room. She watches Dushebene look up and run toward her, only to be dismantled by her own hands. She watches herself walk expressionlessly toward the commander. Corrupted code makes the entire space shift in an instant. The faces belonging to the commander and Dushebene become blurred beyond recognition.
いや、ありえない。何があっても私がヌイちゃんや指揮官を傷つけるようなことはしない。ここが私のメンタルじゃないなら話は別だけど、私の認知をもとに再構築されたデータ、もはや私たちへの愚弄ね。
Helen frowns at the events unfolding before her. Even though she knows that this space is a fabrication, watching herself commit acts that betray her own will still makes her stomach churn. Ding dong. The doorbell rings once again. The same familiar setting returns. Helen stands in the room, gazing at the space that she has created. This is the home she always longed for, the core region of her neurocloud base layer. Countless enemies have attempted an invasion in the past, but she had the power to crush them every time. But now, the enemy has dragged her into this space, making her believe at the start that it was her own base layer. Be it Dushebene or her treasured commander, the enemy merely constructed the framework of them, then modified them using Helen's data and memories as a template.
そんなに私を真似したいなら、これはどうかしら。
Helen attacks. Everything familiar before her dissolves into nothing in an instant. The warm lighting, the comfortable sofa, the commander's smile, Dushebene's silhouette. Everything disintegrates and scatters amid violent shaking, ultimately merging into a single new, pure white silhouette.
人のメンタルをコピーして戦場に作り変えて、ぶしつけではありませんか？それともこれがあなたの趣味ですか？第三世代人形さん。いいえ、むしろこの手で徹底的に消し去りたい余計なデータです。 DP12。 私を探していた原因、コロナホール計画ですか？それに参加した記憶は私にはありませんが、現状を見るに私のデータの一部があなたに植え付けられたのではないでしょうか。噂に聞く第三世代人形がこんなくだらない形で誕生していたなんて。
Faced with the doll's provocation, Cocoon maintains a composed smile.
創造者は私たちは他とは違うと言ってました。素体の構造もメンタルも第二世代人形とは雲泥の差です。優れた第二世代人形のデータは私たちのメンタルを構築する基本となりますが、通常それらは私たちの人格形成とともに抹消されます。それがあなたは DP12 は私に消しがたい烙印を残した。あなたと会って確信しました。あなたの抱く執念の正体はあの指揮官です。私が忘れまいとあらゆる手を尽くして残した情報、それがこうも他人に影響を与えてしまうなんて。ねえコクーンさん、私のメンタルにこびりついたものを全て消し去ります。あなたも含めて。
I guess Cocoon was based on DP12 when she was being created. Anyway, withstand the boss's attack. Oh no, don't worry, you're gonna be fine. I'll just put Boy Masina for you, Helen. Don't worry about it. I got you, Helen. I got you. Oh look, it's that lady again. God, her animation is so smooth. Calmly but precisely manipulating a powerful data stream, Cocoon closes in on Helen within the neural space. However, as the distance shrinks, Cocoon finds that her movements are growing sluggish. Outside the base layer, a massive flood of redundant data appears to attempt joining her processing queue. It relentlessly tears at the computational space she had perfectly planned, trying to occupy it.
システム警告を大量に引き起こして私の気をそらす戦法、見事です。思い出しましたか？マグニに入ったあなたはデータセンターに変化が起きた時にあなたに通知が行くよう細工を施しました。普段なら大した負担にはなりませんが、今はどうでしょう。防衛機械の方も私がうっかり起動してしまいました。あなたの元へ向かっている最中でしょう。ガラクタの寄せ集めなど恐れるに足りません。あなたの実力を疑うつもりはありません。あなたの権限なら本来警報も機械も今すぐ止められるはずですが、記録を残すのはまずいでしょう。マグニセキュリティは財団に属しますが、勝手な情報改ざんや財団の権限を振りかざして依頼を出したことは知られたくないはずです。何よりあなたの背後にいる主にとって都合が悪い。経験上、知りすぎた人形はリセットするのが財団の基本的な対応です。第三世代人形も同じですか？
Alarms continue to blare. Meanwhile, Helen's attacks grow more ferocious in level 2. For the first time since this confrontation began, the thought of retreat crosses Cocoon's mind. Cocoon regards the enemy before her coldly. Weighing her options, she ultimately chooses to withdraw. If Blue Spear were here to provide cover right now, she could just slip into Mangi Security's Intel archives, alter the data and check what is going on. But as Helen pointed out, no matter how much she modifies the data at this point, traces of tampering will inevitably remain. Eliminating DP12 in her current circumstances would endanger her actual mission. There is something more important to attend to. Shelving her clash with Helen for the time being, Cocoon rapidly pulls data from the Intel archives and begins mass-scale deletions and alterations. In Helen's room, Baltil carefully props the doll up into a sitting position, calling her name softly. She loaded Dushevne's neural records 2 minutes ago, then completed a preliminary check. She has already checked this neural cloud. She's certain that the backup is intact, but whether Dushevne can really recover and what stage she'll recover to remains uncertain, and that still makes her nervous. Thankfully, the doll finally opens her eyes after what feels like an eternity. Baltil excitedly grabs the doll's arm, but the doll just stares at her in bewilderment.
ここはマグニセキュリティにあるあなたとヘレンさんの部屋です。よかった、やっと。ヘレンはどこだ？
The doll looks around in confusion. Baltil gently takes her hand, trying to pull her to her feet.
ヘレンさんは今取り込み中です。迎えに来ました。一緒に帰りましょう。帰る？ウヌは誰なのだ？知らない顔だぞ。
Oh wait, she's back to her usual self.
私はバチルだ。人形コミュニティの仲間。DP12 を探しに マグニーセキュリティに潜入したんです。覚えていますか？
Looking into the doll's still bewildered eyes, Valtild presses a frustrated hand to her forehead.
このバックアップは古すぎた。詳しいことは後で話すので、とにかく今は逃げ。
残念ながらそういうわけには参りません。
Cocoon. Valtild snaps her head toward the source of the voice. Standing in the doorway is a pink-haired doll, studying the room's occupants with evident amusement. Meeting a pair of eyes that share a gaze eerily similar to Helen's, Valtild freezes for a moment. Cocoon smiles and steps closer. Valtild springs to her feet and spreads her arms wide, placing herself between Dushebene and Cocoon. But Cocoon pays Valtild no mind. Her gaze pierces straight through her and lands on the bewildered doll sheltered behind her. The instant she sees Dushebene, the icy smile on Cocoon shifts unexpectedly, giving way to one that almost feels gentle, yet obviously deeply unsettling.
やっと会えたわね、KSVK。
汝は？
私よ、ヘレンよ。
A sense of familiarity draws Dushebene toward Cocoon on instinct. Bullets strike the floor near Cocoon's feet without warning, halting her approach. Nikita pushes the door and enters, raising her gun at Cocoon coldly.
第三世代人形コクーンに告げる。直ちに抵抗をやめろ。
Cocoon glances back at Nikita with a dismissive light scoff. She then turns back, steps forward, walking smoothly toward Dushebene, completely ignoring the gun Nikita has trained on her from behind.
リセットされても覚えているわよね。
ヘレン。惑わされないでください。仲間は私たちです。今のあなたのメンタルは何年も前のものです。一緒に帰れば最新のものと同期できますから。
Dushebene looks at Valtild next to her, then back at Cocoon, who is still approaching. She was awakened by this doll called Valtild just moments ago. Despite her repeated insistence that they are companions, the residual commands in her backup tell her she should still be inside Mangi's security, carrying out her duties. The pink-haired doll's frame looks nothing like Helen, yet her voice and manner of speaking are strikingly similar to the Helen buried deep in her memory.
家のこと、覚えているかしら。私たちと指揮官しかいない小さな部屋。
Cocoon's words are like a key, instantly unlocking Dushebene's long-sealed memories. But now she is caught between a companion with a deadly familiar bearing and a doll who claims to be a companion from her future. Dushebene wavers, falling into confusion.
我は。
あなたはいつも捨てられないようベストを尽くしてきたわね。指揮官との再会に備えてただひたすら強さを求めてきた。
違う。ウヌはヘレンではない。
お互い素体は変わったけれどメンタルバックアップに間違いがあるわけないでしょ。
The scales begin to tip. Dushebene slowly lowers her weapon.
私と一緒に来て。一緒に指揮官を探しに。
ああ、指揮官を。
Hesitation drains from Dushebene as soon as the commander is mentioned. Her spirit leaps in an instant.
惑わされないでください。彼女は敵です。本物のヘレンさんはすぐここに来るはずです。
よそ者の言葉に耳を貸す必要はないわ。
このヘレンさんのふりをするな。
Baltild's fury finally boils over. She roars and pulls the trigger, lighting up the room with muzzle flashes. But Cocoon doesn't even move her feet. She simply watches the white-haired doll quietly as Baltild's bullets graze past her, not a single one hitting its target.
ほら、ぬいちゃん。
The same composed smile remains on Cocoon's face, as though Baltild's assault were nothing more than an inconsequential, harmless bit of entertainment. Ignoring Baltild's protest, Dushebene approaches Cocoon, who reaches out to stroke her hair. It feels just like before. She remembers the countless days and nights curled up in Helen's arms, listening to Helen's exciting stories.
エレンに似ている。
Cocoon's hand moves slowly downward from Dushebene's forehead, and as if by accident, covers her eyes. She then lifts her head to face Baltild and Nikita, who cannot do anything about all this. She flashes them a provocative smile of victory.
時間がないわ。一緒にここを離れましょう。ぬいちゃん。
Footsteps rapidly approach the doorway. Baltild turns to look and finally sees the blue-haired doll rushing toward them.
私の仲間を話してくれますか？コクーンさん。
ヘレン